How's it going, everyone? We are back again for a Week 5 game breakdown. I'm here with Eric Mack. I am Russell
Guess who's
Clay.
back?
How's
Guess
it,
who's back?
how's it
Brady's
going?
back. Back again.
Oh, boy. He's going with the 2004 Eminem reference.
Well, I guess that shows my age. That's
No, I was rocking that, back in the day. So yeah, Tom Brady's back. I mean, lots of stuff happening for sure. We'll get into all that. I guess quickly we can talk about Cardinals 49ers. I mean,
yeah. How about the play of David Johnson against the 49ers defense that's lost Navarro Bowman and DeForest Rucker? So they're exposed. The 49ers defense started off shutting down Todd Gurley and surprising us. But now watching what David Johnson did to him, you got to expect going forward the 49ers being a running back play. And David Johnson, he came through. I had it in the Week 5 slate breakdown. You have to play David Johnson. So I got to give myself a little pat on the back. I said you could start the best running back in fantasy football.
the injury to Navarro Bowman is fairly clear. Like, there's a clear point at which the 49ers just became worthless on defense, and it was when he went out. We saw him dominate that Week 1 game, and then this was I'll be honest, I wasn't really on him, so you should give yourself a pat on the back. But yeah, this was a monster game, and I mean, 49ers going forward, right?
Right. The running backs are a must play against them.
Yeah. So let's get into the first game here. Obviously, tons of storylines in this game. Patriots, Browns. Brady's back. I mean, this obviously means good things for the Patriots offense. Edelman, we'll see what happens with LeGarrette Blount, but Rob Gronkowski, Martellus Bennett, you want to take this away for us?
Yeah, so hell hath no fury like a Patriots team scorned. And Tom Brady load up on him with his underpriced particulars, like Julian Edelman is coming off a quiet week. Rob Gronkowski's dealing with the hamstring. I know there's talk that he's not 100%, but Nesson did a report that he played 70% of the snaps last week, including 22 of 33 pass plays. And when you put Brady back in the offense, you get more red zone opportunities. Even if Gronkowski can't split the seam with that hamstring, he can win jump balls in the end zone. I think he'll get one, if not two, touchdowns. And with his price having come down, him and Julian Edelman are both stack options with Brady. And then, of course, you go with the kicker, and you could go with the Pats defense against the Browns team that, they've struggled.
So I think you mentioned something interesting there about Gronk in the goal line situations, the red zone. We've seen it before. He's injured, only playing a few snaps, but he catches 2 and 3 touchdowns. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's in his legit range of outcomes. He's, basically the best statistical tight end of all time. And I know Tony Gonzalez is there, but age adjusted, Gronk is the guy. So I'm certainly not going to tell you not to play him. I think 2 touchdowns is honestly reasonable against this Browns team. I do like Martellus Bennett as sort of the cheap guy, but him and Gronk and Edelman are very interesting for sure.
Yeah, high volume, and Brady will be passing it around a lot. The Browns haven't been that bad against the run, so Blount is not necessarily one that I'm sticking in there. But the Browns have allowed 8th most points to fantasy quarterbacks, the 6th most points to fantasy tight ends, and the 8th most points to fantasy RBs. But I'm thinking if they stick it in the end zone, it'll be with Brady. He's going to go off to the tune of 4 touchdowns in his return.
So, Eric, all right, I'm going to throw out a play for you. What do you think of – I'm thinking if I'm stuck in the Pats, that means they're probably – if things go correctly, they're probably going to be up by a lot early. Maybe throwing a little Duke Johnson on DK to get those, third down pass attempts when the Browns are down 31-0 in the third quarter.
You keep your Johnson in your pants.
No,
seriously,
okay.
That's not a bad play. I just wanted to make that joke. I think if we use anybody though, I'm using Barnage.
Okay.
He's just 2 receptions off the league lead in the past 3 games. That's a total that belies his price. He's been working well with that quarterback, so I'm going with a Barnage play if anything.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that's the other end of that where, he's obviously a bigger part of the pass game. So I'm with you there. I just think, if we're thinking Patriots going to win by 25 to 30, potentially points, I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's going to be dump offs.
It's not bad logic. I tend to believe. Yeah, no, it's not bad logic. I tend to believe that the Browns are going to surprise some people in terms of how they stick around. But I am looking for a 4-touchdown Brady day. So that alone is enough to stack Patriots.
Right, absolutely. Next one here, not quite as many fireworks and storylines, but we do have Carson Wentz, Eagles versus Lions. I mean, I'm interested what your read on this Lions offense is, because this Eagles defense, I mean, before the bye, I became very impressed.
Yeah, it's number 1 against fantasy quarterbacks and tight ends, number 2 against running backs, and number 6 against wide receivers. Now, that was an impressive effort against the Steelers shutting down Big Ben. And you can't like anything on the Lions here. If you love Big Ben and see what the Eagles did to them, you can't love Matt Stafford. I think maybe if you're playing a Lion, maybe it's Theo Riddick, with Amir Abdullah out for the year and Dwayne Washington banged up. There's going to be opportunity for Riddick in the passing and running game and maybe even some red zone scoring. But to me, this side of things is Carson Wentz, the short price on him, and then you get Jordan Matthews and Zach Ertz. I know Darius Slay might be matched up on Matthews, but Ertz to me is a strong tight end play. The Lions have been one of the second worst team in fantasy against tight ends. They've allowed a fantasy high 6 touchdowns to the position, including at least one in each of the first 4 games. So you can love Zach Ertz as a play, particularly coming off the bye and injury. His price is a bit low, and Wentz's price is low. So I think if you're doing anything, you're going with Eagles. But to me, this game is probably one that I'm just going to ignore and avoid.
Initially, I went into this week saying, okay, I like Ertz, but I'm going to not go all in. And then I looked at his DraftKings price, and then I looked at his FanDuel price, and then I started building lineups, and it's just too good. All the injury risk that, he's supposed to be 100%, which I believe he is, all that's, priced in. Really don't think there's any worry about him. And as you mentioned, Jordan Matthews, love that. And like you mentioned with the Eagles defense, we shouldn't always look at it Steelers got shut out by them. But like you said, if you like Big Ben, then I think you have to take that into account, that they just shut down him and Antonio Brown. So, I'm avoiding the Lions, but I do like some Eagles for sure. Next one up here, 2 ugly teams, but might be something coming out of here. Bears, Colts. What are you seeing here?
Well, Luck returns home where he's gone over 300 yards in each of his 2 home games, but that pass protection for the Colts has been an unmitigated disaster. Luck just doesn't have the time to throw. If you're doing anything, you're probably going Luck and T.Y. Hilton because they're reliant on each other. But that's more of a high floor than a high ceiling. I think it's the Bears defense has been a bit surprising. John Fox is a defensive mind. Brian Hoyer has been surprising. I think you can love the running back. Jordan Howard racked up 111 yards and 3 catches for 21 in his first start, and he's going to be a bell cow for a run-heavy John Fox. And then Hoyer, with the loss of Kevin White, it puts volume on Alshon Jeffrey and Eddie Royer and even Zach Miller. So, the Colts have a bad defense, and they're one to exploit, particularly with the running back. So Jordan Howard's going to be a very popular play, but you might get some value out of Hoyer and his targets. That Colts secondary, while they have yet to allow a 100-yard receiver, it's kind of a ragtag bunch that should be one of the most exposed units in football. So I think Hoyer could sneak up for a 303 here.
Agreed. And, his price across the sites is so cheap that I think you have to at least take a look. Um, Eddie Royal is a good real football player. Um, Normally we don't like him in fantasy, but I actually think if he plays, you can definitely look at him this week just with, where those targets going to go without Kevin White now. He was picking up so many. Obviously Zach Miller's in play. We'll see how the health on Alshon, but man, I have to agree on Hoyer. I think he's just too cheap to ignore at this stage. And yeah, Luck and Hilton, and I wouldn't even bother with the rest there.
Yeah, that offensive line is just bad. And you'd be so surprised to see, you might be paying attention, but you'd be surprised to know that Brian Hoyer has gone 300 yards and 2 touchdowns in each of his 2 starts. Jay Cutler might not get that job back, especially if Hoyer exposes what is a bad Colts secondary.
They straight up look better with Hoyer. I mean, I know that Hoyer's not a bad quarterback, especially when you look at some of the backups in the league. Like, of all the backups, he's got to be, top 3 to 5 in the league. As far as this next game, hurricane warnings, I think we would actually be fine with them not even having this game.
Well, the Hurricanes passed them now, so they're in the clear. The Dolphins-Titans game is going to go off. It's just we can't expect any of their players to go off. The Titans have been very good defensively, surprising. They've been 6th best against fantasy quarterbacks, 3rd best against running backs, top 10 against receivers. So you're probably fading Tannehill and Jay Ajayi, who is likely to start because Aaron Foster's just never does. I don't think Jarvis Landry is a great play here. He's usually good for volume, but the Titans shut down DeAndre Hopkins, 1 catch for 4 yards. They've held Amari Cooper to 4 catches for 64 yards, and Golden Tate only went 2 catches for 13 yards. In fact, you want to say that the Titans put all those guys into a slump because none of those guys have really had numbers that you would expect. I think if you're playing a Dolphins piece, it's probably the defense because of the price against the Titans defense has been the 4th most generous against fantasy defenses, giving up a fantasy high 3 touchdowns and including a safety.
You just read the graveyard of my DFS lineups in the previous 3 weeks because I've been banking on the Titans to be, bad against number ones and they haven't. Like you mentioned, I mean, they shut down Hopkins. They weren't even looking at him offensively because of all the attention they were paying him. So I think that's interesting for Landry. Might be able to sneak some Devontae Parker in there in a deep GPP, but yeah, I agree. I mean, are you looking at DeMarco Murray at all or Delaney Walker, or are you kind of just taking a week off?
Murray's price has been gone back up to the premium range. The one thing I do like is the Dolphins have the 4th worst run defense, so Murray will get his 80 yards, but a touchdown might be harder to come by. Only 5 teams have given up fewer rushing touchdowns than the Dolphins to date. So Murray on volume, but this game in general, I think it's going to play low. I'm probably, if I'm playing anything, it's the Dolphins defense and maybe a little Delaney Walker as a high volume target in the short passing game.
Agreed. Yeah. Get your exposure to Mariota through Delaney Walker. I think that's what we do with Mariota until we see, someone else emerge.
And Murray's been a heavy volume receiving back.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, anyway, I don't want to spend any more time on the Titans. Redskins and Ravens, the cross-state battle, sort of. What do you think of this game? And are there essential pieces, some tournament pieces, or cash games?
Well, I think there's some value in here. It's going to be a game that very few will probably look at for points. But Terrence West took over the feature back role last week with 113 yards and a touchdown. Justin Forsett's been released. So West should be good against a Redskins defense that's given up the 2nd most points to fantasy running backs, including a fantasy high 530 yards rushing to backs. They're 3rd worst against the run. West's price is still priced as a timeshare back. So it should be heavy volume in a golden matchup. And if you're looking at Flacco's other pieces, I think Steve Smith senior is hot. Back-to-back 11-target, 8-catch games.
Mm-hmm.
And the Redskins secondary has been bad. They've been 5th worst against receivers, getting torched by number ones. Antonio Brown went 8 for 126 and 2. Des Bryant even went 7, 102. And Odell Beckham went 8 for 121. I know Steve Smith at his age is not those guys, but he still should be good for about 6 catches, 80 yards on a touchdown.
It's sad that you had to say Des Bryant like that, but it's really true. I mean, it's such a disappointment that, the last 2 years really hasn't been able to either get healthy or have a quarterback. So kind of a bummer. But Steve Smith, I mean, 37 years old, coming off, an injury a lot of players just don't come back from, and 11 targets back-to-back weeks. I mean, 5,300 on DraftKings. I don't know how you can ignore that. As far as the rest of the guys in this game, I think he's kind of, pushed down a lot of the guys that I was interested in, the Dennis Pittas of the world. I think his target share is kind of pushing them down a little bit, but other than that, Deshaun Jackson, are you interested in him at all this week?
Well, I think he's reasonably priced coming off that one catch for 5 yards last week, that dud that he posted. The Redskins defense has given up multiple TD performances to opposing number ones in each of the past 3 weeks. Michael Crabtree racked up 3 touchdowns. Allen Robinson racked up 2, and even Corey Coleman racked up 2 with backup quarterbacks for the Browns. So number ones have been very good. So Deshaun Jackson would be my number one choice for the Redskins plays. I'm going to fade Matt Jones. I know he's coming off a very good game, but the Ravens can still stuff the run. They're number 5 against the run. And that's even with teams, running a lot against them because, their games tend to be more closer to the vest and run type games. I'm also fading Jordan Reed. The Ravens have been 6th best against fantasy tight ends, and they haven't even given up even 4 receptions plus or more than 40 yards to opposing tight ends. So I think this is going to be one of Jordan Reed's quieter weeks.
There you go. Eric's bringing the heat this week, guys. I love it. I'm kind of with you on Jordan Reed. It's not that I don't want to play him, but definitely less than ideal matchup. And when you're paying up for him at the tight end position with guys that are in the mid 3Ks on DK, it's tough to really, he really needs 20 points, Yeah. Next one here. 3-1 Texans versus the 4-0 dominant Vikings.
Yeah.
Sam Bradford's looking good. Other than that game
managing wise, not good DFS wise.
Yeah. Good enough to not get himself killed like I thought he was after the Packers game. So he's good enough to where I can trust some of these pieces, even in less than ideal matchups. So I guess what's your takes first?
Well, you've seen what the Vikings defense did to Eli Manning. They were monsters against the likes of Aaron Rodgers, Cam Newton, Eli Manning, and Odell Beckham in the past 3 games. So you can't like Brock Osweiler or DeAndre Hopkins coming off that disappointing performance we've seen out of Hopkins. I'm fading Hopkins, Fuller, and Miller. Xavier Rhodes has been one of the best shutdown corners in the game. He held Beckham to just 23 yards receiving, his career low for a full game. You might consider the Texans in a defensive struggle, but not this one. The Vikings have not turned the ball over. Bradford's yet to throw a pick, and I think they've only fumbled once. So they're the second toughest opponents on fantasy defenses. So fade the Texans, consider the Vikings playing at home as a defense. And then I kind of like Jerick McKinnon. He could post a combined 100 yards. Matt Asiata at his price can pump in a touchdown. I think this is going to be a heavy run game. Don't like Bradford or Diggs, and I'm even fading Kyle Rudolph against the Texans defense.
Yeah, and I think we touched on that a few weeks ago. Diggs, it's fair to believe he had his 2 best games to begin the year, and that's not a knock at all. I mean, he had 180 receiving yards, so he's going to have more good games, but it just, it's a little tough to expect what he did those first few weeks.
Plus, you're playing the Texans, who are number 4 against fantasy wideouts and number 2 against fantasy quarterbacks. So it's going to be a heavy run game. McKinnon and Asiata.
Agreed. I like McKinnon. Super, super athlete. So, but yeah, that game, you should be pretty light on that game overall. Jets and Steelers probably shouldn't be light on this game. Lots of deep passes I envision. Are you digging? Are you digging this game?
Yeah, no. When you look at this, you look at two very good run defenses, and you think, "Ugh, bad for fantasy." But as great as both run defense has been, both offenses can really sling it. They got good weapons on the outside, and their defenses haven't been great against the pass. Roethlisberger had that one bad performance against the Eagles, but he had 3 monster games, and the Jets have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So you shouldn't have an issue with rolling Big Ben in there for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Darrelle Revis hasn't been the guy that he used to be. So, even if you don't play Antonio Brown, you can like Marcus Wheaton and Sammy Coates. They're huge bargains at their price against this Jets secondary, which has been bad. And then, Le'Veon Bell's coming off that return, and it was a great return. It's just the Jets' run defense is very good. If you're playing Bell, you're probably hoping he gets in the end zone via the pass more than the run.
Yep. Absolutely. And there's still a chance he can hit that value. But in terms of that game, yeah, I don't envision him, having much success on the ground. As far as Sammy Coates and Marcus Wheaton, as you mentioned, Sammy Coates, 3,600 on DK. I'm trying to throw him in there whenever, I need one more low-priced guy. I think he's pretty automatic. Based on how they used him last week, we saw first play against the Chiefs, they just tossed it up to him. Showing a little bit of confidence at least. So I do like that. Fitzpatrick and Marshall, I'm in. I think that's an interesting stack this week, especially with Fitzpatrick's price, I guess, the
Steelers have been the 4th worst pass defense, and you look at the yardage they've given up to opposing quarterbacks. First week, 329. Second week, 366. Third week, 301. And they just missed the 300 mark last week, 287 yards. And these quarterbacks, not exactly a fantasy who's who. Kirk Cousins, Andy Dalton, Carson Wentz, and Alex Smith. Now, I know Ryan Fitzpatrick is probably right in that mix, but he's also in the mix for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns with his receiving core. I'm assuming Decker's going to play. He's been a bit banged up. I'm assuming Brandon Marshall will be in there. Forte, I don't love him against the run. The Steelers are the 4th-ranked run defense. But, Forte, Marshall, and Decker are all involved in the passing game. So a little sleeper play on Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I'm not, especially if you want to make a lineup with Fitzpatrick, Marshall, and get the other side with Antonio Brown. I'm not afraid of that in a cash game. Might be some safer options like you mentioned with Hoyer, but overall, I'm not afraid of Ryan Fitzpatrick this week.
The benefit of Fitzpatrick is the quality of his receivers. Hoyer is a bit more scary because you're kind of trusting, some secondary fantasy pieces where Marshall and Decker are productive, consistent guys and, in a good matchup.
Right. So this game, Falcons-Broncos, I've been going back and forth on this all week. I can't let Matt Ryan be this good for the entire season. I just can't. My brain won't allow that to happen. So
he's been the irresistible force, and now he faces the immovable object.
Yeah, so this is going to be a very interesting matchup and will, shift a lot of how I view the Falcons if they, play well against the Broncos. But what's your read on this game?
Well, you got to fade Matt Ryan against the best the best defense against quarterbacks. I know the Broncos have given up some points, but they will finish the year number 1 against quarterbacks, and they're particularly tough at home. They shut down Andrew Luck there. So Matt Ryan, he's looking to be more in the 252 range, and there's just too many other 303 quarterbacks. We mentioned Hoyer and Fitzpatrick as the ones that can trump Ryan's production at cheaper prices. The running backs, I'm fading Devonta Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Coleman actually, he has that sickle cell trait that might impact his body's ability to function in that mile-high air in Denver. And save for that week 3 hiccup with Cincinnati and Jeremy Hill going off for 2 touchdowns, the Broncos have not allowed a 65-yard rusher or a 40-yard receiver to running back. So those heavy usage Falcons backs probably not good plays, particularly as their prices are going up. The value here is clearly on the Broncos side. Trevor Siemian has been scorching hot. Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders have been hot, and the Falcons are dead last against fantasy quarterbacks and 8th worst against fantasy wideouts. A Sanders-Siemian pairing is one that I'm going to be using, and I think it's going to be particularly productive because C.J. Anderson is going to pound it at the Falcons, and then Sanders will be open up over the top in the play action.
I'm actually kind of intrigued now. Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting. And obviously, Broncos at home with that defense is just, that's a brutal matchup. So nothing against Julio, nothing against Matt Ryan, but I think we're sticking more with Broncos here this week.
Yep.
As far as the Bengals and the Cowboys, I'll be very interested to see the run game for the Cowboys in this matchup. I'm wondering what's your take on this?
Well, it is an interesting game to watch because it's two solid run defenses facing off against two ground pounding offenses, kind of like a battle of wills almost. If you're going with the back, I'd probably go with Jeremy Hill at his lower price than Ezekiel Elliott, and the Bengals are probably a bit better up front defensively than the Cowboys are. The Bengals have been 7th against fantasy backs, and they shut down C.J. Anderson in week 2 for 14 carries for 37 yards. And they're just one of 2 teams yet to give up a rushing TD. So Elliott at his price is not as intriguing as Jeremy Hill at his. I would consider A.J. Green, but the Cowboys have actually been surprisingly good against number 1 receivers. And I'm probably just going to play anything. It's going to be Hill with the Bengals, and then on the Cowboys side, since I'm not loving Ezekiel Elliott and Dez Bryant probably won't play, there might be a play in there for Jason Witten or Cole Beasley, in the dink and dunk game.
Yeah, agreed. And again, we see week in, week out with these slot guys like Beasley and Adam Humphries and Jeremy Curley. Like, the matchup doesn't matter. Like, they're going to get those 5-yard dump offs no matter what, just because those are like teams are going to give that up, So even if it's a lockdown corner, they're going to give up those 5-yard passes. So I actually think Beasley and Witten are relatively safe. I mean, if you really want to jump into that whole thing, but that's more of a season-long thing. I agree, man, with the Bengals run D. Vontaze Burfict is back, and he's a terrifying human being, especially against the run. So I kind of expect the Bengals to at least hold the Cowboys down a little bit.
He's as hot as the scary clown sightings.
Oh, my God, I know. It wouldn't surprise me if, on the weekdays. That's
You heard it here first. Daily Fantasy Cafe. Clown sighting. Vontaze Burfict.
Yes, he's behind it all. So normally I don't get excited for team defenses, but I look at this Bills-Rams game, and I think there's a 2 defensive touchdown defense sitting in here somewhere. I don't know who it is, but I don't know, man. This one's going to be a crazy match.
It's easy to detest both quarterbacks and all of their lack of weapons on both sides of the ball. The Bills losing Sammy Watkins sapped them of a downfield threat, and the Rams, they're a Todd Gurley team. In fact, this game to me, while people love the defenses and their ability to force turnovers, both offenses don't turn the ball over, and they stick to the run, and they're stubborn with it. So this is going to be a running back game, LaShawn McCoy against Todd Gurley. I'm actually going to go with Gurley over McCoy if you're playing a running back in this run-heavy matchup. Gurley's going to get 20-plus touches. The Rams are at home against a Bills defense that's tough on fantasy quarterbacks, despite the fact that they have given up some big numbers. The Bills did give up on the ground 100 yards and 3 touchdowns to Matt Forte. They gave up 83 yards and 2 touchdowns to David Johnson, and the 4th most rushing touchdowns to fantasy backs to date. So I'm going with Gurley for a little bit of a a surprise 25-102 performance. And then, if I play anything else, it might be Robert Woods just on volume, because without Sammy Watkins, he could get 6 or 7 catches for about 80 yards.
Eric, you just made my week.
Why is that?
I'm a big Todd Gurley guy. The Todd Gurley fan
You're a Gurley
club
man?
I'm a Gurley man. The Todd Gurley fan club has not met for a few weeks now. We're postponing all the meetings, and things are sad right now. So yeah, no, I agree. I think my play would be I like both the running backs in this game, but whichever one I'm playing the defense with that lineup. So that's kind of the way I might maneuver that. So if I'm playing Gurley, I'm playing the Rams defense. And if I'm playing McCoy, playing the Bills defense. Either way, yeah, I think this is a running back game. Robert Woods on volume, and that's it, pretty much. This game, Chargers Raiders.
Now we're talking.
Should be some fireworks. Michael Crabtree, just going off to start the year.
And how about his price? His price really isn't reflecting his production and how he's actually blown away Amari Cooper's production. Crabtree, racked up 3 touchdowns last week. Crabtree, Cooper. Cooper's price is coming down because Crabtree's just stolen targets and touchdowns and fantasy thunder. Crabtree had a touchdown in each of the meetings with the Chargers last year. The Chargers defense lost shutdown corner Verrett for the season to the knee injury. They've been 6th worst against the pass with Verrett, so you have to expect even more struggles with the replacement in there. The Chargers always tend to engage in shootouts, if only because Phillip Rivers is a gunslinger. 4th worst team against fantasy quarterbacks, 3rd worst against running backs, and 9th worst against tight ends. Watch the status of Latavius Murray with his turf toe, and Clive Wolford with his knee, because if they play, you could throw everything in there. Carr, Crabtree, Cooper, Murray, Wolford. This game could get very loose.
Yes, absolutely. And as you mentioned, Jason Verrett out for the season. So this Chargers defense, the secondary did look good for a few weeks, but without him, that's a huge loss. And from a real football sense, like Crabtree and Cooper are great, a great tandem. But in terms of the red zone and stuff like that, I think Cooper's going to get some touchdowns, but Crabtree's the guy there.
Yeah.
And they're going to him, and he looks great. I just think it's working, and I don't see them going away from that, really. So Cooper's going to have those big yardage games, and he's going to have touchdowns, but I think Crabtree's, here to stay in some sense.
Yeah, and I'm surprised his price hasn't corrected really yet. If you're going with anything on the Chargers side, I'm in love with Melvin Gordon. I'm on his bandwagon. He's coming off a 2 TD performance last week. He has 6 rushing touchdowns to lead the NFL. He's had at least 1 rushing touchdown in each of the first 4 games. The Raiders' defense hasn't been great. They're struggling against running backs. So Chargers options are good in the run game, especially with Gordon getting passes now that Danny Woodhead's out for the year. And then you go with the tight end, whether it's Antonio Gates, who's banged up with the hamstring, or Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry's been, pretty productive in Gates' absence. You almost have to hope Gates is out so Henry can be a surefire play.
That's how I'm looking at it exactly. And I think as the weeks go on and Henry, sort of proves himself more and more, I'm wondering by the end of the year if, he's going to be getting snaps even with Gates back. I think that's just going to be the way they move, especially, if they continue to lose. I expect them to get the youngster out there more and more. Overall, yeah, I like Gordon. I think that's the play there. I know his yards per carry isn't good, but he's getting those receptions, 43 receiving yards each of the last 2 weeks, and getting those red zone touches. Leads the NFL in red zone touches. So look at least. Next game. So this is one where I'm hoping everyone fades Odell Beckham, after the tirade
You
and
know,
after, getting shut down by an elite Vikings defense. I'm really
he's kind
hoping
of,
people.
he's kind of a fraud. And the Giants' offense, they're frauds. Eli Manning, I know he was facing a tough Vikings defense, but they stunk against the Saints, and the Saints can't
Yeah,
stop anybody.
I know.
Odell Beckham, touchdown wise, he has to break long ones. And now that he's no longer young and a rookie, he's now the shutdown guy. Hell, yeah, we'll give you your 8 catches for 100 yards, let you go nuts, give 15 or 30 back in personal fouls, and we'll make someone else beat us over the top. And Eli Manning has been a fraud this year, fantasy wise. I think this is a horrible game for the Giants all around. I think this is a Packers lopsided contest. The Vegas line agrees. Packers 7-point favorites. I think Aaron Rodgers is good to go for 303 at home. The Giants secondary is banged up. Rodgers Cromartie's struggling. Eli Apple, he might play, but he's still a rookie. Janoris Jenkins is the one to worry about. He might shadow Jordy Nelson. So maybe if you're fading anything, you're fading Nelson. But I love the play of Richard Rodgers as tight end. He's coming off a touchdown before the Packers bye, and then Jared Cook during that bye, he damaged his ankle, and he's going to be out for a while. And Aaron Rodgers loves his tight end. Aaron Rodgers, Richard Rodgers play against the Giants safeties. The Giants safeties that are opposite Landon Collins are more run game guys, so the tight end should be open down the seam. Kyle Rudolph went for 5 and 55 and a touchdown against the Giants. So I'm loving Rodgers, and maybe the underpriced weapon in Randall Cobb opposite Nelson, who might get shadowed by Jenkins.
Every week I just look at Randall Cobb and say, Randall, is this the week, my man? You gonna do it for me this week? I mean, a lot of people are gonna be on Jordy. Like you mentioned, I might have some shares too, but that might be an interesting matchup with Jenkins. This should be a Cobb week. It should be. I just haven't seen it for so long that, I'm kind of getting skittish on him a little bit. As you mentioned, Richard Rodgers, love that price. And with Cook out, he's going to be that guy, especially in the red zone. So I do like that. I do like Beckham. I think, against this Packers secondary, they've been giving up huge games so far this year, but
Beckham's a fraud.
I can't disagree that, it's been pretty consistent that teams have been able to get in his head. If that's the case again, we could just see another blowout for the Packers. So
if you like 8 catches for 100 yards at a premium price, play Beckham. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. He's not getting
Monday night.
Before you go on, I just want to give one shout out to Mason Crosby in this game. FanDuel, he's a huge bargain. It's strangely, I think he's only 4,500 at FanDuel. The Packers are going to score a lot of points, and even if the Giants do keep Aaron Rodgers to 3 touchdowns instead of 6 or 7, there's going to be plenty of field goal opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good call, and he's min price on FanDuel, so yeah, I like that one. Again, Monday night, Buccaneers, Panthers, looking like no Cam. No Cam, oh boy, what do we do with this Panthers offense?
Yeah, you got to kind of fade it, but you can put volume on Greg Olsen and Calvin Benjamin. It's just we can't be guaranteeing Derek Anderson's going to throw him touchdowns. The Bucs, though, have been very bad against opposing wideouts. And they're quietly very good against the run. Quietly, they're number 4 against the run. So should put the game in Anderson's hands, and Olsen and Benjamin are go-to guys. So there could be some volume there. Bucs-wise, I love Winston Evans. The Panthers' defense hasn't been what we're accustomed to seeing. They've been, since the first week, they've been very good against the run, but they've kind of been getting exposed. You saw a big receiver in Julio Jones just torch him. So Mike Evans, Winston play is intriguing, especially in prime time. But if you're riding the Panthers, as a favorite at home, and with the values of some sleepers, maybe you go with their defense too. They're hungry, they're talented, they're at home in prime time, and Jameis Winston has been careless with some turnovers. So could be.
Yeah, And again, I think Winston, they're just firing him out there. He's basically leading the league in passing attempts, for better or worse, makes mistakes, makes some great plays. Mike Evans going to be the guy at the end of the day to, really reap the benefits there. So, certainly like that. Agree. Olsen and, Panthers D, if you want to maybe try to take advantage of a mistake or two, but overall, not too much appeal for this Monday night game for me.
So I just want to add a breaking news item on a game that we talked about earlier. Eric Decker has been ruled out with his shoulder, and Darrell Revis with a hamstring is doubtful. So while that might cause you some concern on Fitzpatrick, I'm probably going to like Brandon Marshall that much better because of volume and the matchup, like we said, with the Steelers secondary.
Yeah, again, in fantasy football, we love it when the targets are more and more concentrated to a few guys. So I think that pretty much means all systems go on Brandon Marshall.
Yeah.
Are there any other little tidbits or ideas you want to throw out there before we sign off?
No, I just would, say in that primetime games, love the Packers and maybe the Panthers. So if you're playing those late night games, the late night games tend to get a lot of people easy money of just one earlier in the day. They got their budget that they're ready to burn on the primetime games Sunday, Monday. So there are opportunities to pick up some cash, and I would load up on the Packers and Panthers. And Mike
certainly agree there.
Packers, Panthers, Mike Evans.
There you go. Certainly agree there. I think that essentially covers it. Obviously, we got some bye weeks with the Saints, Seahawks, and one other team that has some players on it that I own that I'm sad about. But anyhow, hope this helps. If you don't want to look at my pale face as it gets to fall and winter, check out Eric's article on the site. And as always, if you like what we're doing here, give us a like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That is it for us now. Don't be afraid to hit us up on Twitter, and we will see you guys in week 6.